Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Citizen Bear. Glad to have you this time. We're following up on our series on emergency preparedness. I know we've been doing a few episodes and kind of rolling this forward. Last week we talked about water and different options to purifying water and obtaining it and maintaining it. And this week we're going to talk about fire, which dovetails into that a little bit because fire can be used to purify water. You can boil it, and it's a help. It's a good start to kill some of the disinfect it. Doesn't get everything out of there, but it will disinfect it. So we're going to get started with that in a few minutes, and I brought some props again. We can talk about a few things and do this. I just want to follow up on water a little bit and also carry forward into this fire episode of emergency preparedness stuff and some skills and some tools that you can use and add to your kit if you're starting to build one. This is very fundamental. I'm not here to give you a full, rundown on everything that you can use or anything that you can build or resource or everything else. Just some fundamentals and a layered approach. Like last week, we did a layered approach to water. We talked about some of the basics and, some of the things that you can buy and add to your kit that might be helpful to use for larger quantities, smaller quantities, immediate access to purifying water. And it's all helpful. They're good tools. It's a good start. But you need to do some research and you need to get out there and look at this. And it's all food for thought. And like I said, there's all kinds of stuff out there. I spent a lot of time on this and looked at it, read and done a lot of things. And I also have some background and experience. So doing that, you have to forgive me. It's cold here now and the sniffle season has started and I got a little rasp in my voice. So I don't know, some people might think that's better. But in any case, we're going to start doing that and getting down the road with this. But I want you to take a look and think about this and start to put some of these things in your kit as you're starting to, if you're thinking about preparing, you get a backpack and just put some basics in there for yourself and food, water, as we've talked, how to resource water, have a couple of those great straws that I showed you and things like that. But you need to do your due diligence here on your own part too. And I also would say that, when we get down the road, eventually I want to take what we're doing here and have you get some of these things. And then we're going to start maybe in a few weeks down the road or something. We'll do some outside episodes and we can actually put some of these into practical application and we can show them. But I'd like you to start getting them into your pack before we do that. So upward and onward with fire. Why do we need fire, right? And the answer may not be as obvious, or at least not full-throated when we talk about it or think about it right out of the gate. But, if you think about it, unless you're heating your house with electric heat or you're using an electric stove, you're using fire to cook. We just use it in a more technologically advanced way. We control gas of different types and things like that. And we use it to heat our house and all these other things. So, most people are using like a natural gas or an LP or something like that. And we're, so cooking with it and doing stuff all, running our, we keep a tank or we have a pipeline or whatever. And we use fire though. We are, using fire to stay warm and to feed ourselves and do lots of good stuff. Most great cooks and chefs will tell you they prefer a gas stove. So, that type of heat. And if you've ever cooked on an old-fashioned wood stove, it's the best. In an emergency situation, though, we're still going to have to do things like eat and stay warm and heat ourselves and keep a presence and, some of that comfort that we need. Fire offers us light. It offers in a dark time. It offers us warmth and colder nights. It offers us the ability to cook in different ways on the coals or, hanging a pot or setting a pot into the coals or whatever. And we can boil water to clean water. So we're going back to more of a pioneer mindset, but we are still doing exactly what we're doing today. We're trying to feed ourselves, keep warm, and because we don't have a lot of light in the dark time, hopefully the fire offers us a little light, a little security. I can tell you on a dark, cool, cold night, a campfire is your best friend, and it is very reassuring. And if you have plenty of wood to keep it going, it's a great thing for everyone who's there, and you can cook and make a meal and have hot soup or anything else. It's just fun. Roast meat, so forth and so on. Unfortunately today, I grew up in a house that had wood stoves and fireplaces. It had regular heat too, but I mean, we could augment the heat as we wanted to, and we could hold the house with wood stoves and fireplaces. It was an old farmhouse that had been updated. Today, though, it's amazing to me all these years later, and I just built a house. You could have the option of putting in a gas fireplace for aesthetics, but that was about all it is. They wouldn't even put in a wood fireplace in my community when I built the house. We just don't build houses to cook or heat anymore. We don't really put wood stoves in. We don't have big chimneys, grand chimneys anymore, and great fireplaces. We just have moved away from it. It's not part of our lifestyle anymore. We've become so used to infrastructure. And yet we don't really appreciate how fragile that infrastructure can be in a difficult situation. And there's lots of books out there in dystopian or post-apocalyptic books that very informatively talk about that trigger and things like that. There are even some new movies coming out that talk about that. And, you need to take it as food for thought. I don't think it's necessarily sitting out there that dramatically, but, it is food for thought for the fact that the infrastructures we so greatly depend on and take for granted every day may be far more fragile than we ever really wanted to admit. So in a difficult time, we want to be able to do these things and have fire as a great resource. There's a reason it's the center of man's evolution for millions and millions and tens of millions of years, right? We made fire right out there with making the wheel. So let's talk about some of the basics about fire. If you know a fireman or you talk to one, he or she will most likely tell you about the fire pyramid or the 4 components of fire. In truth, that long ago, it was always based on the fire. This still is based on the fire triangle, but today there are 4, and there are traditionally 3. And for our purposes today, we're going to talk about the fire pyramid. The 3 components of the fire pyramid are fuel, a heat source, and oxygen. The 4th leg, that is a more modern leg added to make the pyramid, is a chemical chain reaction. It's more of a chemical situation in today's world, obviously, with all kinds of modern technology and equipment. We have chain reaction. We can have chemical reactions with all kinds of things, and we're not going to get into that because that's not. I mean, if you're smart enough to start chemical reactions to get fire and stuff like that, God bless you. But that's not. We're going to talk about the basics here. So when we talk about starting a fire in a crisis situation, we're going to address each of these 3 principal elements of fuel, heat, and oxygen. We're just going to talk about them as we talk about some of these components and different things we can utilize. Getting the right blend and understanding how to resource the best materials is for fuel and heat source, particularly is particularly essential. You get out there and we want to be able to get fuel, and we want to be able to get, oxygen's everywhere, right? You just need to be able to get it to the fire. So having the fire up in the air and having an air flow to the fire, like a Dakota fire pit and other things. And those are things we're going to work on outside the studio at another time. But, you can build a cross section or build a little teepee kind of fire and help the air get in there. But we want to talk about fuels. We want to talk about, heat sources today, mostly because, like I said, oxygen's everywhere. As long as you can get it into the fire, it's pretty straightforward. Let's talk about some basic fuel, something called tinder. In many ways, tinder is not a full-blown fuel, but a small special resource of fuel that helps you get the fire started. The old-timers might have called it kindling, but tinder is even more reduced than kindling. You kind of put kindling on a tinder to get it going. And for our purposes here, we're going to kind of eliminate newspaper and all the obvious things like that, throwing gasoline on it or kerosene. We kind of want to eliminate all that. And I think I forgot a couple of things today, so sorry about that. I'll bring it up when I get there. I'm running out of the house and I'm trying to grab stuff. So let's get beyond that and just talk about some basic tinders and things like that. First, let's talk about some natural tinder. And, these things need to be kept as dry and as warm as possible. And, this is one of the drawbacks, but they're very efficient and depends on, how your weather is. If it's dry weather, you're in great shape. You can utilize a lot of things that are around you in the wild. Dry grasses, leaves, stuff like that. We can talk about something else with that in a minute, but these things can really be a lifesaver out there, and they can kind of, help you put a spark to them, and you can usually get, blow on them a little bit, and you can get a fire going pretty straightforward. One of the things that first I want to say you can make yourself that for a tinder that's kind of a natural tinder is char cloth. It's kind of an old school kind of thing, but you put heat to it. I'll let you. There are lots of videos out there on it, but you can research it. But if you don't know about it, you wouldn't research it. And you kind of just, a lot of people use old jeans, stuff like that, an old shirt, material from an old shirt. You get a couple patches of this stuff. You usually put it in a tin or something, you smoke it and kind of get a heat on it. And you literally turn it into charcoal. You kind of break it down to its carbon form. And it's still a cloth, but it's very fine. It's almost like paper, And you can use that, keeping it dry in a nice tin. And I can tell you take a little bit of that and you get it below some sticks and some kindling and some dry wood, and you get a spark to it. It'll go. So char cloth is something easy and capable of making out there as a natural tinder. One of the other natural tinders that's really pretty great is birch bark, white birch, that stuff that peels. You can peel that right off. You shred it up. It's got natural accelerant in it. It kind of has this like paper. Sometimes they call them paper birch. You kind of just put it down and you shred it and get a spark to it. If it's dry, it'll go, right? It's good. So very good. Great natural resource for you out there if you can find a paper birch. We talked about some leaves and dry stuff. You can make a bird's nest out of it and kind of shape it into a nice little bundle there that'll hold a flame and will nurture that a spark to grow into a flame and kind of blow on it and get it going, One of the other great things that's out there, though, in the wild, and I carry this one. I don't carry some of the others, obviously. Although I will tell you, there are people who put, and even people who make it, they have tins or bags with different types of natural fire starter. You can buy them, but you can also make them up yourself. Put a little paper birch in there and some grasses and other things that are good for burning and different types of things that, they pack them all into a little pouch. And, if you want to do that and keep them dry, that's great. If you want to do that, super. Fat wood. Going on into something a little more interesting, fat wood. What is it? If you look at a pine tree and you look where the branches come out, you'll see like white ooze coming out there, sap, and a lot of time in the joints of the tree, of a pine tree. That wood that's permeated with that sap really is fat wood. And that's exactly what we're talking about. We're talking about a wood that has been permeated with natural resin that burns. And for those of you, most pine sap is really kind of, it's kind of like a kerosene almost. It burns like kerosene, it's just wild. I mean, that's why you see some of the wildfires out in the West, they have got all this low shrub pine. And man, when that stuff gets burning, it's unbelievable. And it's just, all that creosote in it or whatever, creosote, kerosene, whatever you want to call it. It's a close cousin. And you can really start a fire with this. So what you can do with, and I forgot I have some, and I do carry this in my pack, and I carry several sticks of it so I don't have to resource in the woods, go hunting around for it, is fat wood. And you take that and you can take your knife and you can shave that wood really fine, and you can make like dust with it, and then you can even shave it a little more to make what we call feathers. And you can set the feathers aside, and you can get a spark or a flame onto that dust that you've created, and then those little shavings, and that'll get a nice little fire going. You throw those feathers on there, and then you start getting some other dry stuff on there. That'll actually start resourcing a fire pretty well for you. And it's a great natural resource for you. And you can practice kind of shaving down some wood, or and then actually taking off small slithers of wood after that, which are the feathers. But very, very effective to start a fire as a base for a natural thing. Now, one thing that often people run into is if you're in bad weather and you get into rain and a lot of wood is wet, smaller wood will dry very quickly, and you can kind of get it under a cover and kind of try to dry it. I don't want you to drain your body heat by drying stuff too much, but if you have to, you can get a little closer to your body, help dry it out under your coat or something. But, you find some sticks and stuff like that. You want to get them under cover as quickly as possible. But one of the things you can do is wood gets wet on the outside, obviously, it's bark. You can do some batoning, and batoning works with, even if you want to get smaller sticks for your fire or smaller pieces of wood, it's about a way of chopping wood, especially smaller, blocks. You get a 6-inch, 8-inch piece of wood that you've sawed up or found. You can use it with smaller branches too. If you get a branch that's 2-3 inches wide, or a piece or a small tree you cut down, you can take that and you can baton it. And, you can use your regular knife or a halfway decent knife. I brought a hunk of steel with me here that, it's good for batoning. It's not just for batoning, but it's very heavy, and I like using it for that. And you put that on there, and you get another stick or another baton, and you put it on your thing, and boom, 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 boom. You can split it down the center, and you can split it into quarters or whatever. What that will yield for you is you'll have a nice dry center of the wood, at which point you can take your knife or any of your knives, and you can start doing that same process. Feathering wood, start to feather it down and shave it down. So if you have fat wood, you can add that to it, or just utilize that as on top of another tinder to get that started. So you can have some dry wood to start that. You can also then just use that piece of wood broken down and get the dry wood onto the fire, and eventually the outsides will dry. It'll be a little dampening, but you'll have some good wood to start the fire and get larger and larger sticks on there, so that eventually it won't matter as much. Get a hot fire going. Now, one of the things people carry sometimes, and a couple of variants on this, people do it differently, are cotton balls. And what they usually do is soak cotton balls. They tend to treat them in Vaseline. Put a little Vaseline in them, move them around, and then put them in a baggie or something, carry them with them, or tin. And a cotton ball will burn. Put a little Vaseline on it. Just, you get a spark to it, it will go. Very nice, and a lot of people live by that. Another thing, people talk about dryer lint burns really way too fast to be a good, it's a tinder, but it's not really effective. What a lot of people do is they use egg crates, and they'll put a fair amount of dryer lint in there. They might even add a little Vaseline to the dryer lint and put it in there, and then sometimes they even put a little bit of candle wax inside that. You can put a little wick to it if you want to, but you can light the cardboard from the thing on fire, from the egg crate on fire, and it'll burn. And it'll give you a nice, slow, steady burn with a fair amount of heat intensity. And people use those too as a homemade kind of fire starter. So there's lots of things you can resource in your own world, or if you're out on the go, to help you get a fire started if in a tough situation. And using them when you can is great, right? Because it saves other stuff. It saves the stuff you don't want to necessarily use all the time. Now, one thing I know that they let's talk about some of the other things that we have that are more basic fire starters, and things that we can talk about. The advantage of some of the store-bought, we'll call them that, manufactured fire starters, is they work in all weather. And they work just about all the time. They have a long burn time on them, 8, 10, 12 minutes. And they really will catch wood on fire. Even if it's a little damp and wet, it will have such a long burn time that it really will help you get something started. And these things work great, So I brought changing these kits over, as I said last time. I was going through my stuff and have these little bags. I'm big on compartmentalizing. And you can use these different tinders out there, but I've got a bunch of them here. And I am switching over to the Molly pouches, but don't judge. These pouches have served me well for a long time, so Anyway, first, I think another company bought this, but it's always been known as zombie tinder. I love this stuff. So, you can go out there on the internet. I believe they're still in business, so you can go out and find it. It comes in a little tin like this. And there are different sizes. These are the large size ones. And they look something like that. Oh, they got a small one in here too, right in the center. So you can buy different. They have different makeups, all small, all large, a mixture of small and large. That's a small one. And as you see, they all have a wick on the end of them. Now, I don't know exactly what their formula is here, but there's wick wrapped all the way around. You can kind of see there's wick wrapped all the way around. And they have a little thing in the end. Now, if you're lighting this with a match, you can light the wick and it will burn into it. And they're all natural. So, like I said, I don't know their formula, but I'm sure there's some kind of sap or some other resin that they've put around this thing to make them go. But inside is, I'm not sure exactly what it is, but it's ginned cotton. So they put some kind of like Vaseline or something into the cotton or whatever material they're putting there. Looks like cotton. So if you're starting these with a spark, what we're going to talk about a little later, you cut this thing open, you pull it apart, and you kind of fluff up the center, and you can put a spark to it. You don't necessarily have to have a big match or a lighter or anything like that. These will go just fine, and they will burn intensely for a long period of time. And as you can see, I've got 6 of them in here, 5 large and 1 small, depending on what you're in. Obviously, the large ones are great for a little bit bigger weather, a little worse weather. In keeping with that, this company also has, still got plastic on it. Yeah, this one's still sealed. Anyway, what's in here is the center, the cotton center that's in these balls, and they call it a ginned cotton, and it's just packed in here tight. And you can pull a little of that out and just fluff it, or you can, much like doing it do-it-yourself cotton balls, only this is a little more refined. And you cut a little out and just pull it out. There's a lot in here, even though it looks like a small tin. And you can really put that in there, and it'll get a good tinder going. You can put some kindling around it and whatever, and it'll go. Some of the things we talked about. Moving kind of right along. Oh, I want to talk about some jute cord. Now, I use this brand. I don't know where all this dust came from. I use Blackbeard. Again, I have no affiliation with any of these people, and they have no affiliation with me. I've just used their products, and I keep it in my kit. So it's Q to you. It works very well. There are other people out there. There's other brands who make kind of jute rope like this, and that's fine. If you like the other brands, you do your research and find out what you like. But something like this is great. It just looks like a piece of rope, and you cut this off and open up the plastic and cut this off, and you cut a small piece, and you pull it apart, fuzz it up, and you put a spark to it, a match, a light, anything like that. This will go, and it will burn much like these. It'll burn for minutes and minutes and minutes and really provide you with a really intense heat source and a solid fire starter for weather. This stuff will burn in a lake. You can throw it on top of a stream, and it'll float down a stream burning. This is the same thing with these. Year-round, cold, hot, rain, snow, sleet, either one of these are going to seriously work for you, and they're both great. Moving right along, same idea, all weather, all season. And Blackbeard sells these, and there are lots of other people who sell them too. These are called fire plugs. And you can buy them by the bag. I keep a few in my kit here. What you do is, again, this is just kind of a condensed press, I don't know what it is really, but a material like a ginned cotton, I guess, but it's not. And you kind of work them. You work them apart, and you can kind of flex them out. And eventually you'll get that really opened up and fuzzed up, as you can see here. And you kind of fuzz them up a little bit. I would do a little more than that, but that's a good start. And you can put a spark or a flame to that, and it will burn right along. Very nice. And, I know I've got a lot of stuff in here in this little kit. Some people are like, oh, you only need one. That's great. I like having options. These things are desperately light. I mean, I don't know, it's just a couple ounces. All this stuff. I don't know, it's less than an ounce probably. This is nothing. So all of these things combined sitting in my kit, this little pouch. I've got fires. I can start. They say that you can start 50 fires on this. But even if it's 40, that's a lot of fire right out of the gate with one thing. I got a handful of these plugs to help me out, and I've got several tins of this stuff. So, for me to start 100 fires with what I've got here, that's a hell of a good running start in a bad situation, right? So let's see what we put here. I think I covered most of what I wanted to talk about as far as the man-made tinders. Now, I'm sure there's other stuff. I'm sure somebody's got something else out there. This is what I've found. This is what I've utilized over my time. And I just love these products. And, the brands, you can look around. I don't think you'll get another brand on these. But the jute rope and other things, like I said, I use the Blackbeard. But if you want to use somebody else, have at it. But let's start to talk about some of the ability to get some other things out there. I'm going to pull a couple pieces out from my little kit here. A couple of different places. Oh, that's my neck knife. So let's talk about some other fire. I also keep in this first out bag, in my top of my kit. I keep some fire starting gear, and I have, some more Blackbeard, and I have a couple other things. And I think I see another flint down. Oh yeah, it's just a large rod I keep, and all that other stuff. Some of this, back to my rope weaving days. So I've got some more plugs in here. This is just a first out bag. I don't always want to have to resource my main thing. Or just, you get out, you get to a campsite, or you set your bag down, you open the top. You got a couple of first out bags that give you just about everything you need. This is my little neck knife. Put it around your neck. It's a great, great little thing. Something like this. It's heavy, but it'll do a lot of good, and you can use this with a fire start. I've got it on a lynch here. So let's talk about getting a spark or getting heat to the fire, kind of the old-fashioned way or with some modern tools. Now, one of the first questions people like to throw out there is, can I start a fire by rubbing two sticks together? If you're lucky, yes, you can. If you know what you're doing, you have a shot. And if you have some better weather, you have a better shot. And you can put a bird cage, you can put a bird nest together, and you have a pedestal, and you have this is really where the pyramid of fire comes in: fuel, oxygen, and heat source. So you're using friction as a heat source, and you get your stick down. And what you want to do is get some of that dust, from wood, and put it down into a notch in your pedestal, their base, your wood base, and you want to cut a notch also in the base to let air get up underneath. So you have a little bit of airflow coming into that. And you drive it down. Now, some people use a bow drill, or some people just hold a stone on top of it and just double hand it. But you want to drive that down, that stick down into that material and down into that pedestal, and let that oxygen get in there. And eventually what you're going to do with that friction is you're going to create an ember. That's all you're getting is an ember. You ain't starting a fire with that. But you take that that red coal that you get out of that, and then you pick it up and you dump it in your bird's nest, and you blow on it. You get you fold your bird's nest in on it, you blow and you blow dry materials. You blow and then you cycle the air up into it, and eventually, and you can get smoke, and then you'll get fire. And you can start a fire that way if you're good, if you got time, and if you have some luck. If the area you're in is dry and the resource materials you have are dry and you have stuff like that, and you can find the components, and you can really work that drill, it's harder than you think. You ain't going to sit there and just go, 1, 2, 3, 4, woo, I'm done. No. You will sit there forever. Really rawing out your hands, getting that thing going. You start at the top and work your way down. Start at the top. You're trying to put pressure on that the whole time. And it's not easy. Not easy at all. But you can do it. But like I said, if you're hoping to go out into the woods in a crisis situation, and one of the first rules of crisis situations, or those of us who believe in Murphy's Law, anything that can go wrong will. So dominoes tend to fall in a direction. So, if you're going out there on a bad situation or you're being forced into a bad situation, probably there are other elements that are going to stink too. So let's go on and talk about a couple of these things that we can use to start a fire other than trying to rub two sticks together, huh? Lighters. And I forgot to bring mine. But there are lighters out there. If you're counting on a Bic lighter, or, I shouldn't say Bic, but any kind of disposable lighter, they'll work if they work for you in the field. They can get cold, they can break down, they can break, and they can kind of just stop working in really desperate situations. And it's happened to a lot of people out there. So while having a Bic lighter is not a bad thing, it may not be the thing that keeps your ass warm. So just be thoughtful on that. Not a bad thing to have. There are some emergency lighters out there. You can charge them. They have a battery. And you hit it, and they have a little cross, and they make a little cross of electricity and a little flame thing there. And you can touch that to a tinder, and it will even natural tinder, and it will make a tinder go. It will cause fire. So it is a heat source. They also have some out there that are butane, where you open an emergency one. They're a little more rugged, and they have like a blowtorch flame, a little flame that comes up, and they're pretty good. They're come in different colors and stuff, and you can keep them around your neck even, or other things, and you can really start a fire with that. It's quite intense. Here's the problem with either one and all of them. You're depending on a battery that in the cold probably will lose a charge, or you're depending on a butane and other things that's probably going to run out eventually. And so you want something that's going to have a little more usability and a little more repetitive use to it. Bad situation. So these disposable lighters, I keep an emergency, a couple of these lighters. I have them around someplace, and I guess I have them, but I really don't count on them. I've played with them. Instead of looking at lighters, what I would highly recommend is we're talking about ferro rods. Now, this bad boy will put a spark to tinder, and the bigger they are, the more sparks you're probably going to get. Okay? These are brand new ones. I haven't used these. They come in all different sizes and shapes and creative uses, but fundamentally, the metallurgy is all the same on these. And they're ferricium, they call it? It's a metal. Anyway, it's a series of, don't ask me to do the metallurgy for you, but it's a series of rare earth metals and a little bit of iron mixed in together and pressed together. And so when you put a hard material against it, like a steel striker, or you can use a steel striker, or you can, if you have a back of a knife, that's where the little neck knife comes in. And you really don't want to use your blade side, but you can use your back side. Having a clean knife that doesn't have a lot of polish on it or coating is good. And you can scrape this thing, and it'll throw sparks. And I'm talking really, really, really hot sparks, like welding sparks. They'll go out there, and they'll burn right through stuff. So when you touch them to any one of these, or a grass tinder or something, it will start a fire. You just blow on it, get it going, but these don't even need to be blown on too much, but it will start a fire. Now, all of these have a coating on them, as you can see. When you start to use this, get on the wild, you're going to want to take that or if you're in a tough situation, you're going to scrape that coating off there, and you're going to get down to a kind of a silver metallic, and that's where you're going to actually work your spark, okay? So that's something where you kind of, you can use these. Now, these come in a couple of different formats, too, and just going to give you an idea. I think Solo makes these. Soul, I think it's called. This is a little micro, and again, you put it right around your neck, and it's just too cool. Got a little ferro rod in the center. It's got its striker back here. You can run it right down, boom, scrape it out, and it will give you a spark. It's got a sparker on the back here, steel plate. Or you can use your knife. And nice little handheld or around the neck unit. Some people make smaller ones. There's another company that has a smaller version of this. I've played one, but they're kind of really micro, so, you can find stuff in the woods, like a piece of metal, or even a very heavy piece of glass, bottom of a heavy bottle or something. If you get it across that steel, it has to be harder than the material that you're using here. Again, there's a couple of different things. This is more of what you'd call your classic ferro rod, right there. There's another variant here. You see them around. You take this out and come on, baby, work for me. They have okay, this may not be the best, but I haven't used this in a long time. But anyway, this thing comes off, and it's a little stiff right now. I don't know what I'm doing wrong with it, but push here to open. Yeah, thanks. It's not opening. And I don't know what's going on here. Got all kinds of crud in here. Anyway, this thing comes off, flips around, and there's a ferro rod here that's spring loaded, and it's a one-handed job. You just push your finger on this thing, and it'll automatically start sparking. So, it's designed, I believe, for pilots who didn't have, may have been injured and got, sorry. I'm messing the joint up here. They have, it was designed for one-handed use. So you can find those if you want to use them. That's great. A ferro rod like this, it has thousands of sparks on it. You can start thousands of fires. A ferro rod like this, good Lord, man. I can't even imagine. 10,000 sparks, spark sets. And I have one that's even bigger, much bigger than this, with a wood handle on it. It's not really practical for your kit, but but I bought it for shits and giggles. And it stays in my big box at home, and it's pretty cool. So that's a ferro rod, one of the best tools you can have with you because it's long-lasting, usable, and militaries around the world use these things, and they're great. And when you combine them with stuff like this or dry tinder, fabulous. And, of course, the sparks will throw in any kind of weather. It's just how your tinder is coming out. And I think it's a good time to show you, too. I also keep one of these. This is my K-bar. I carry it on the rig I showed you a while back. But in here I carry, a sharpening tool and a ferro rod with a striker. So I have right on me, I always keep my kit that I can utilize and resource right out of the gate. I just don't think you can have enough of this stuff if you're in a dark place in a bad way. So it's got a little homemade thing on it here so I don't lose it. Kind of fun. Moving along. I want to get into matches. Every MRE out there, if you're getting real MREs, in the accessory kit, in the pouch, there's a little bag in there. We showed that last time. They usually have paper matches, little book of paper matches. And you can, they're great. As long as you keep them dry, use them pretty quickly, you can get your tinder started with that, and it's a nice thing to have. One of the other things that you want in matches, though, if you really want to deal with bad weather and hard times, are these emergency matches. Now you take this bad boy, it's going to burn intensely all the way down to here. So you strike this thing, the striker, and you get that going. It will burn and burn and burn and burn and burn. And that gives you a long, long run at getting a tinder started on a fire. There are also a smaller variant of these that you can take out there. Those are a nice thing to have. And obviously they burn for a while, but they will give you a pretty good resource for starting a fire, and you have a match. I mean, you can use box matches, the wood box matches, but again, you're looking at something that is going to absorb moisture. These are sealed containers, and these will burn underwater. I mean, you take them out of the water, they'll light back up, So, you try to put them out in the water, they'll just burn, they'll just reignite. And by the way, these are black beer too, so you can get them at their site. But there are other people that sell this stuff, and you can find it out there. When you stick these underwater, pull them out, they'll relight. So, all-weather an all-weather fire starter, just like your ferro rod. So that's what I would recommend in matches, not really looking at your, if you take a box of matches because your uncle smoked a pipe or something, that ain't it. You're probably going to get them wet. You're probably going to get them, they're going to absorb moisture, and they're going to lose effectiveness out when you really need them the most. There are several other fire starters out there, you can resource for kits. There's a block thing, you pull it, it self-ignites and it burns, and it's great. I mean, it'll work great. I've seen it work, it works great. It's out there. If you want to carry that and you want to put that in a bag, that's great. I mean, it's not something that I keep in my kit, but it is something like if you're going to shelter in place, it will start a fire outside the house. That'd be great. Or if you have a wood stove in the house, but if you have a fireplace if you want to start a fire outside the house, maybe have a fire pit and you want to do some cooking outside, you can do that. And that thing will work great. But, it's not really, I don't know that it's really practical for in the field. And there's some other self-striking, stuff out there that they've got match heads. They sound great and they're cool, but when you're really down and trying to get a fire started, I don't want to find out. I don't want to, have it blow out or kind of work or maybe work. They're good in theory, but average in practical application a lot of the time. So, having stuff like this these matches and ferro rods and stuff like that, that's really going to get you going. Fat wood, things like that. Now, just a quick, I'm not going to talk about one of these sessions down the road, and we're going to talk about axes and all that other good stuff and, knives and good things, and saws for, chopping wood and getting wood out of the foot. But just a couple of footnotes when you're doing this. We talked about batoning a little bit. One of the things that you're going to be careful of, look, if you're not a woods person, you can go out and you can resource dead wood, fallen wood. Watch out above you. We call those widow makers. The branches that have fallen are down, but they can have a big sister or brother sitting up in the tree still. And a good breeze, just, Murphy's Law, can bring it down on your head, and that's the end of you. Not getting hurt and starting a fire or getting resources like fuel, wood, to burn is one of the secrets to staying alive and having a successful outing or, getting through a disaster. So you need to have some of the tools that we're going to talk about, saws, things like a Sven saw and other things like that, a good small axe and camp axe or hatchet and things like that. That'll help you on their chains and hand chainsaws and stuff. You can get. There are all kinds of things that we can look at. We'll take those out and do more practical application with them out in the field. But having a saw is very important and some of those tools. But you can start resourcing those things. But be careful when you're out resourcing wood. So, you want to find some dead stuff down on the ground. It's probably your best bet. Rotten wood is great for kind of starting a fire because it's like paper on the inside, but it's lousy for heat and burning. So it's not really a great fuel. But stuff that's dry, that's fallen in the last little bit and seasoned, that's fabulous. That's the best you can get. So, take a little food for thought there. You can think about it. So just kind of getting into a conclusion here, and this was a brief introduction, as most of the stuff we're trying to do in studio, just to give you some ideas. What I'm hoping is you're going to put some of this stuff in your pack, and you're going to, start getting there. So when we get out in the field, you'll be inspired to try to use a little bit of it with us and out in the field a little bit. And when we do a second series on this down the road, that's outdoors. And I don't mind doing it in the winter. That's fine. So we can do that and we can talk about things. So, I hope that you will do a little research and start building a little kit for yourself and put it in a backpack. This is your fire. These are some of the tools that you can rely upon to help you get going. On a separate note, and I plan to speak on this a little more, bad things in life can happen even under the best of circumstances. Unfortunately, today, we don't live under the best of circumstances. With this in mind, we should take stock of our world. The world has never been more united against the aggressors, and and our country has never been more united against those who seek to overthrow it. This can be a scary time, but also one of great hope. In the end, we decide. Hopefully, our choices are in line with God's blessing, which is also happening in this country and around the world. In keeping with that, being prepared is a choice that makes us all stronger as we look to a brighter future. So as you build an emergency kit, you become stronger, you become more confident, you have a fallback. You're not going to be a refugee if you can help it. And you're not going to be the weakest link in the chain. And that makes you strong, and that makes all of us stronger as a country as we push through a difficult time and start to look to a brighter, more dynamic future in an ever-changing world. So thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.